Okay, so this same story was uploaded, I think, 2 years ago, but I think a year ago. I can't remember. But a third part has been added, and I don't think that person has even seen it. And I wanted to upload it, but this is the first part, anyways. And by the way, if you're asking, this is edited me. So in earlier, I say that this is long, but in reality, I do take breaks during this. So I wanted to tell you that, and no worries, I'm not stressing myself. I took like 30-minute breaks, like in between some of these. So yeah. But anyways, I hope you guys enjoy, and I will post this every Monday. And this chapter does get loud if you have the volume all the way up. But anyways, I hope you guys enjoy. Bye, lovelies. You were against the idea from the very beginning. Spirits and ghosts were not something to be messed with. You had watched enough horror movies to know that. Come on, Effin, don't tell me you're scared of a couple of empty halls, Ayana teased as she dragged you closer to the gates. Tall spikes of pure iron lined the perimeter of the abandoned shrine, rusted in some parts but still sharp, acting as a defense to keep unwelcome guests out. They rose immensely into the cloudy night sky, too high to be able to jump over or sane person to climb, while light from the full moon reflected off the inky surface of the metal. But leave it to your friends to find the only gap in the otherwise impossible impurity wall. And of course, they wanted to investigate the supposedly haunted shrine on Halloween, going on and on about the novelty of it and how you would get to see if the rumors about the wandering spirits were true or not. To be honest, you didn't care if they were true or not. If the ghosts lived there, fine. No skin off your nose. As long as they stayed away from you, all was fine. You didn't mess with them, they didn't mess with you. Yet, here you are, wrapping in a heavy overcoat and warm hat, and not by your own valuation. That was for sure. When your friends had first told you about the plan a week prior, you had laughed in their faces, thinking that they had been joking because, come on, they were stupid, but they weren't that stupid, right? Apparently, they were. As they proceeded to tell you about the whole jasuku they had found the other night, and how they planned to sneak in on Halloween when the supposed spirits would be most active. Immediately, you had tried to talk them out of it, pleading with them to have a shred of common sense. Your words fell on deaf's ear as they brushed away your concerns and gave you a concerned come with them or not. It didn't matter. They were going to go either way, and of course, just like a fool, you decided to go with them because as much as you hated the thought of messing around with spirits and magic, you weren't about to let your pea-brain friends go stomping with around a potential janitor's place without someone there to look after them and to be the voice of reason. That's how you found yourself crawling through a barely big enough gap in the fencing, still grumbling as you followed your friends further across the ground. You were already not a fan of the place. All the plants and greenery that had once flourished under the hands of the priestess and shrine maidens were withered, crunching under your feet and scratching against one another as a chilly breeze swept through the open courtyard. A long tree that once spread its pink cherry blossoms every spring stood dead in the center, now bare and casting nothing but shadows across the cracked ground. Ponds that once held clear water and koi were filled with algae reeking of must, and the bridge you used to cross over them creaked in with every step as a warning of its intentions to dump you under the muck below. The building itself wasn't in great shape either. The tiled roof, that holes and rows that were completely missing, surely letting in all types of water and wild animals. The walls themselves were cracked, all full of craters and covered in mold, casting a stench of rot through the whole building and providing the inside with no shelter from the elements. Despite your oblivious distaste for the place, your friends were besides themselves with excitement, chattering nonstop as they dragged you deeper and deeper, floor after floor, exploring the entire shrine. They seemed all too happy to ignore the blatant creepiness of the place, ranging from abandoned shrine rooms to the chimes that ran outside. More than once, you could have sworn you saw something moving along the shadows, creeping along the walls after you, dragging your foot out of yet another hole created in the rotting wood of the stairs as you climbed to the next floor. You couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. It was like something was following you the entire time, almost attached to your back and breathing down your neck. But no matter how many times you snapped your head around or looked into reflections, there was never anything more. It's still nothing to make you feel better. Ghosts didn't always show themselves to people they were about to ruthlessly murder. No, they stalked them, waited until their guard was down, and when they separated from the group a heavy hand landed on your shoulder, causing you to jump and let out an embarrassing loud hitch screech as you jumped away from what you thought was a ghost killer, your eyes clenched shut, ready for whatever brunt punishment awaited you at the hands of the dead. Yet it never came, and when you opened your eyes, the only thing that greeted you were the faces of your amused friends and their snickers as they miserably failed to hold out their amusement. Geez, Evan, I never took you to be such a scaredy cat. I'm gonna butcher all these names. I think Gori laughed as he clenched his sides, tears running down his face. Mikasa was right next to him, in much of the same position, holding herself upright against the wall. Yeah, what happened to that I don't care what happens against that you carried around at school? You growled, marching past them into the next hall, not caring that you didn't know where you were going. Anything to get away from their taunts and smug faces. I never said I wanted to be killed, and even if I did, I wouldn't be ripped apart by some pissed off monster just because my friends were looking for an all-rating rush. You huffed, crossing your arms crossed your chest and trying to hide the flush of your embarrassment that was quickly crawling up your face. Anya squoggled. Yes, to where you stood until uneven were her laughing fits. Oh, come on now, she giggled and placed a hand on your shoulder, shrugging it gently. We're just trying to lighten up the mood. Ever since we've gone here, you've been tense. I wonder why. You spoke through gritted teeth, sending a glare her way. In response, she simply put her hands up in surrender, walking back towards the others. Listen, there's only one more place we need to go check out, and then we can go here. I already forgot what I named this person. Gyro, I think that's how you say it. Gyro walked further down the hall, stopping in front of the last door at the end. Looking over his shoulder at you, he smirked. Is that all right with you, scaredy cat? Huffing, you made your way over to the others. Let's just get this over with. Pushing the door open, it creaked in protest, revealing that mostly room was unlike any others. You all spread out, curiously checking over the room in your own ways. The walls were almost undamaged, and there were only a few places where water managed to drip through the ceiling. Moonlight seemed in through the one window that on the far side of the room, illuminating the whole whole space. Sorry. Scrolls and other small items littered the shelves, and crates filled with unseen oddities laid beneath them, next to a rolled-up futon. If you had to guess by the smell alone, you would guess that it contained a majority of incense along with other herbs and spices. In the very center sat what appeared to be a small torii gate, simple in structure and standing just taller than you. The wood was just normal brown, and hanging from the topmost bar was a piece of embroidered cloth. Taking a step closer, you saw that the word travel stood proudly in elegant kanji. Whoever had done this was clearly skilled. Not a single thread was out of place, and for it to have lasted this long and stayed in such condition showed the care that went into crafting it. In the middle of the inspection, Mikasa wandered from where she was and been previously searching through some cabinets of old dishes, seeing how focused you were on the material in front of you. She elbowed your side and suggested lifting her elbow. Thinking about a souvenir, eh? I thought you didn't like creepy things. Please, I wasn't going to touch it. I was just curious as to why it was here of all places. Beats me, she shrugged. These people were probably crazy or something. Must be why this place is abandoned now. Yeah, maybe. You agreed, but you still couldn't get the nagging feeling from earlier out of your mind. It doesn't give me the creeps, though. It does give me the creeps, though. We should leave it alone. Good idea. How about in that moment your senses spiked, and it was as it now that everything that would go wrong was about to go wrong. Like when you wake up and know it's going to be a shitty day. Right on cue, Anya jumped over to join your group. Hey guys, oh, what are you doing? Oh, pretty. Before you could stop her, she reached out and grabbed the cloth of the torii gate, just barely tugging on it. Immediately, you felt your blood run cold as a panic sweat broke out across your skin. Turning towards your companions, you knew they felt it from the terrified looks that gathered on their pale faces. What happened? A scream tore through the room. It was otherworldly, high-pitched and ear-splitting. It's almost as if it tore right through you to the very core, grasping your soul in its tight grip with the ghostly chill. Then, as if summoned by the smell of fear, you saw something move in the corner of your vision. Then, as if summoned by the smell of fear, you saw something move in the corner of your vision. This time there was no doubt about something being there. Slowly, ever so slowly, you turned to get a full view of the far side of the room. There, rising from the corner, was a figure drenched in completely sad shadow. It stood hunched, swallowing an imaginary breeze. It turned what should have been its face towards you. You all stood, frozen, too scared to move, as unblinking red eyes stared from the dark abyss, while white teeth, sharp as a steak knife, peeked out from its open mouth. With one shaky inhale of breath, it let out two simple words. Get out. You didn't move, still too shook at what you were seeing to move. And that is until it spoke again. This time its voice was filled with power and rage. It seemed to shake the very foundation of the house as it screamed, "Get out!" And you were all scrambling towards the door, all too eager to get away from the floating entity. Unfortunately, you forgot that while you were indeed trespassing in a haunted shrine, it was also an old haunted shrine, and as soon as you applied force to the floorboards beneath you, they crumbled under the weight, letting your foot slip right past its jagged edges and cutting you on the way. "Wait, I'm stuck!" you cried out after the retreating figure of your friends. Both Anya and Goru were out, leaving only Mikasa to turn back at your call. Her eyes met yours, pleading before focusing back on the figure that was still approaching the door where she stood. In the moment, you knew it was the same look your dog would give you before bolting to the hide after being startled by some loud noises. It hurt so much worse than that when, after one last look, she ran after the others, leaving you trapped and alone. The monster paused in its purpose, staring at the door through which they had escaped, before turning its gaze towards where you were stuck. Then, on invisible legs, moving under its black cloak, it began to ever so slowly make its way over. Frantically, you pulled at your foot, not caring how many cuts you gained, nor how many nails you broke as you pried the boards. Then, after a few seconds, you managed to yank your foot out of the wooden trap. The creature was almost upon you now, as you frantically scrambled back in an attempt to put more distance between you. You hardly even noticed when you passed underneath the torii gate. Blood smeared the polished wood. It was then that the creature jumped, teeth flashing, its eyes blazing, with the intent on ripping you apart. You raised your arm from you, preparing to sacrifice a limb in exchange for the rest of your life. Scrunching your eyes closed, you waited for the searing pain of the teeth sinking into your flesh. Yet, it never came. Cracking open your eyes, you were met with, well, you weren't sure what you were looking at. It was almost as if the universe itself was in front of you. Swirling shades of purple and black spawned around you, with some visible force holding you above it all. Voices spoke, but no louder than whispers, fading in and out before you could gather what they were saying. Had you died? Is this what the afterlife was like? If so, where was everyone else? Before you could get far onto your own philosophical questions, you felt a tug on your sleeve, yanking your arm back. You were shocked to see no one around. Spinning in a complete circle, you found yourself completely alone. Right, alone. Your eyes burned as you remembered back to the house. They had just left you there. Only Mikasa had even turned back, and even she had decided to leave you. Tisk, some friends they were, but still, you had them then. At least you wouldn't be so afraid. You didn't even know where you were, only made matters worse. "Hello? Is anyone there?" You called out tentatively. There was a slight chance of that monster or creature similar lurking around, and the thought of running into another one of them made you shiver. "Please, I'm scared. I don't want to be alone." Your voice grew quiet as you realized just how hopeless the situation you were in. Nobody was coming for you. You were going to be left there to die. Tears blurred your vision as you felt your knees giving into the emotions and letting them slide freely down your cheeks. Not like anyone was here to judge you. You sighed. Oh, you stayed like this for who knows how long, crying as you completely left. Then, enough, your silent sobs, you heard a voice. One so quiet, it almost thought you had imagined it. Then you heard it again. And again. More clearly. This way. The voice were followed by a tug, just like the one earlier. And this time, you did nothing to fight it. allowing the invisible force to pull you through the dark mist of the abyss. Then, after a short while of... Sorry. Oh, holy moly, I'm not even close to being halfway through. Sorry. You saw it, a small dull light coming from one of the distant directions. You grew more excited, and your pace quickened. That was it, the exit. At this point, you were all but running, excited to leave this, whatever this place was. The closer you got to the more blinding the light became, up until you had to close your eyes against the harsh glares. Still, you continued on, and while the light gave you hope, it also took away your sight, which led you to not so gracefully trip and tremble towards head over heels. Groaning, you rubbed your backside that was definitely now bruised. Was there no end to the injuries you would gain today? God, your mother would be going to kill you when she knew how bandaged up you were. At least the light was gone now. You realized as you rubbed your eyes, looking around you, you saw that you were in, once again, the old shrine. The longer you looked, the more it dawned on you. The room was somehow fixed. Fresh paper had been placed over the window and blocked out the moonlight, giving everything a darker feel. Sliding doors and cabinets that were previously been busted were now in perfect shape. Gone that the thicker layer of the dust had been thickly coated everything along with the misty smell of mold, replaced by an even thicker scent of incense and sage than before. Whatever you needed to get out of here before the thing returned. There was time to worry about the sudden room renovations later. Limping across the room, you slid open the door with a small thud. Exiting one hallway, you saw that it wasn't the only room that had been fixed, but seemingly the entire building was, well, your floor no longer creaked under your weight as you made your way down the desert halls, using the wall for support. But the time you made it to the second junction of the walls, you were all but steaming with anger. Just wait until you get your hands on those three. There would be hell to pay for leaving you behind. You had half a mind to... Turning the corner, you almost tripped as you stumbled back. You weren't sure if your eyes were tricking you or if you were having some horrible nightmare, but there was the way your luck had been going. There was no guarantee on anything. Right around the corner from where you had emerged were two of what you wanted to say men, but that wasn't exactly the right term for it. They were standing in the hallway as if they were acting as some sort of guards. The one on the left was shorter and looked as if to be a cat wearing a kimono with a cloth over his head. He sat resting on his hunches, eyes peering into the darkness of the halls beyond. His partner was not so alert. Leaning against the wall with his eyes closed, he had passed as a human if it weren't for the blue skin and shark-like teeth that poked out between his thin lips, promising to rip anything that came near them into shreds. They spoke casually, thankfully not having noticed your presence yet, that is. I can't believe we got stuck with a night shift again. This sucks, Catface groaned. He leaned against the wall with a huff, the fabric covering his face floating in the air before settling back down. The man beside him just gave a shrug of his shoulders, uncaring. Hey, it's your fault. You're the one who tried to steal Grono's dried fish from the pantry. I was just an innocent bystander caught in the crossfire. As the men argued, you were so slowly making your way back from where you had come. becoming as silent as you could cross the floorboards. There was no real plan on where to go, but you sure as hell weren't staying here with these two things. Say what you want, but you're the one the whole time. What the fuck am I saying? But you're the one who told me where they were in the first place. Sharptooth cracked his eyes open and grinning. I got in trouble for helping a friend. I hardly think that's a freak. The wood under your foot let out a groan of protest as you stepped down on it. Space felt silent as you prayed that they would think it was just a trick of their mind and brush it off. You saw the cat-nosed man's nose twitch once, twice, before whipping his head around. Bright green feline eyes locked onto you where you were, followed by his partner's stolid black ones. Well, there goes much for being sneaky. Abandoning all hope of not drawing attention to yourself, you turned and sprinted back the way you had came, trying to ignore the throbbing in your ankle as you went. Behind you, you could hear scrambling and heavy footsteps as the guards came to their senses. A human? How did one of those get in here? Who cares? Catch it before it gets away. Shit, this wasn't good. There was no way you'd be able to outrun these two in the condition you were in. Not to mention you didn't even know where you were going as you randomly chose different halls at each intersection. God, this place was like a maze. Deciding that hiding was your best option, you made sure you were out of view of your two pursuers before choosing a door and praying it was empty. Entering the room beyond and shut the door as silently as you could behind you. Doing a quick survey of the area, it looked to be something of a bedroom, with a futon sitting in the corner, thankfully unused. Seeing a set of smaller doors on the wall, you quickly opened them and discovered a mostly empty closet. A cliche place to hide, but with the voices of the two men growing closer, you can't afford to be picky. Climbing in and shutting the door behind you, you peered out in the small creek and you had left open. Your breath caught in your throat as you two shadows stopped in front of the door, panting. Where'd it go? Shit. He'll kill us if it escapes. We can't let that happen. Go wake up the others. There are only so many places it could have gone. Right. And with that, they were gone. They were off again, slipping up and going in different directions. When you were sure they were gone, did you allow yourself to breathe again? What a situation you have gotten yourself into. Now, not only did you have monsters looking for you, but they were going to get reinforcements. If you made it out of this experience alive, it would be a miracle. What a situation what got yourself onto? I'm not looking for. Did I accidentally? I think I did. Oopsies. You stayed like this for what you could only assume was hours, hunched over and trembling. Despite the current situation, you felt your eyes become heavy with exhaustion. Thanks to all this excitement of the night, shaking your head, you tried your earnest to stay awake. You couldn't fall asleep when they were still searching. Every once in a while, you could hear footsteps racing by the room, and shouts crossing the hall. The door had even been opened once, causing your heart rate to spike and your body tense. But the left end, nothing ever came of it, as the person soon left. The admiration could only last you so long, though, and you found your head bobbing, jerking back up the moment you caught yourself dozing. But surely a few minutes won't hurt, right? You needed your energy to run after all. Moving a bit to get more comfortable, you struggled onto the blankets beside you, closing your eyes and wishing to wake up, and all of this having been a bad dream. It seemed like you had hardly closed your eyes when you were assaulted with light. Your arm instantly went up to protect your eyes from the harsh glare, but to be only ripped away as a large hand latched onto your arm, easily enlatching it. A cry left your lips as you were roughly dragged out of your hiding spot. Your body was stiffed from being in the same position for so long, and you were sure your knees would have been buckled if you had even touched the ground, as you were currently being held at least a foot in the air. And if you had thought the guards you ran into earlier had been freaking looking, then this guy took the cake. He stood taller than any person you've ever met, at least 7 feet tall, and was a wall of muscle. He wore nothing but old-fashioned, I almost said harem pants, and a black mask that curved into a beak. His dark red hair sprawled out in all directions from his head. Who would have thought I'd find a little mouse hiding in my closet? The guys are going to die when they hear this. He began dragging you out of the room, ignoring your struggles, as if you were nothing more than just a bug. Still, you pried at the hand. Oh my god, I keep losing my spot, I'm sorry. Holding you above the ground, biting and scratching at any skin you could reach. Then it came across your mind. These guys may not be human, but maybe the autonomy is similar? Winding up as much as you could, you shoved your heel between his legs. He froze. And for a moment, you assumed you had just pissed him off. Then, like a tree in the forest, he fell to his knees, letting go of your arm as he grabbed the injured area. Storing that little bit of information away in the back of your mind, you scrambled to the distance between yourself and the groaning man. As you ran, you saw a flash of light from the end of the hall. It must be a door outside. With a new burst of energy, you flew down the remaining distance of the hall. All you had to do was get out of here. After that, you could play things by ear. By the time you actually reached the door, you were unstoppable, almost fully running as you practically ripped the door aside, but moving so fast made it impossible to stop your momentum. As you exited the building onto the hallway outside, slamming full force onto what felt like a wall of stone that threw you back. The force of being thrown caused you to slam your back of your head onto the wooden frame you had just run through and twisted your already sprained ankle. You're a whole new jolt of pain controlling through your body, dazed and distorted. Your groan rubbing the quickly forming bump on your head, and pushed yourself up to your elbows. So, you must be the little human causing a ruckus. My whole schedule has been thrown off thanks to you. His voice cut through the air like a knife, crisp and direct, with almost Cinnamon feel to it, like the person speaking thought they were better than everyone. Slowly, you raised your gaze The illumination by the light of the rising sun was the most beautiful yet terrifying man you have ever seen. His eyes had no emotion, gazing down with a senile gaze like melting gold, overshadowed by nearly trimmed brown locks that looked so soft you wanted to run your hands through them, and from rich purple feathers were weaved and hung. Pale skin spoke in his status, constructing against lips, yet into expression of nonchalantly, and form under which poked endless canines. He was dressed in traditional Japanese garments of various shades of purple, green, and black, and accents of gold along the trim. All in all, a stunning man, almost godlike, and left you stunned that you forgot and you had even been running in the first place. He didn't share the sentiment of awe, apparently, because with a turn of his heel, he was walking the way he came. With his back to you, you saw that you assumed was a family crest embroidered and span the entire back of his robe. Chrono, bring her. And just like that, you were picked up from second time in less than 12 hours, thrown over his shoulder and carried like a sack of potatoes. Immediately you started to struggle. You got away once after all, so there was no reason you couldn't do it again, right? Before you could once again place a well-aimed kick between his legs of another monster, you felt a sharp pain in your shoulder that in time seemed to move in slow motion. No, wait, it wasn't everything else that was moving in slow motion. You were the one moving in slow motion. You watched as you clenched your fist continued its previous path towards your captor's back, moving at such a speed you knew you couldn't do any damage, even if it connected. Okay, now I will be doing this every Monday because it's so long. Holy shit! It's not stressful though because I'm taking breaks. But anyways, you could only watch helplessly as the floor moved and you were once again brought back into that hell house, deeper and deeper into its maze of hallways with every twist and turn. By the time you were fully starting to feel the efforts of whatever it was that you had been hit with wear off, you were stopped in front of one of the many wooden doors in this place. This one was slightly different, however. The wood was more polished, cared for, with thicker, more intricate papers covered the panels. Hearing the telltale sign of wood sliding on wood, you nonchalantly tossed to the floor a second time. Lefty slowly slowly rose yourself from your previous slow state. When you tried to get back to your feet, a firm foot was placed on your back and brought you to your knees, forcing your chest to the floor in a low bow. Wood bit into your skin and the joints of your knees popped as even more force was applied, making you squirm in an attempt to escape the crushing pressure. Know your place, human. You're before the head of the Shizaki. Show some respect. Kai, remove your foot. Humans are more fragile than us, and it would be a shame if you were to break it. This Kai was relented. Yeah, that's what it's called. Keeping his heel dug into your spine a few more attempts longer before removing it with a final push. Still, even with the pressure removed, you remained low in your forehead touching the floor, practically in a fear of what would happen if you looked up, and practically because you were scared as to what you would find to look up. Rise, human. Let me get a good look at you. The voice from before spoke, sounding worn with age, as you assumed that this was the head of the house speaking. Shit, I accidentally did this twice. Slowly, ever so slowly. Sorry, Slowly, ever so slowly, you did as instructed, raising first to your knees, then shakily your feet, where you placed both of your weight onto your uninjured leg. The entire time you kept your gaze down, ignoring the whispered voices. Let us see your face. Your heart felt like it was about to squeeze, beating wildly with the exhilaration despite your best efforts to remain calm. Letting them know how scared you were would be a mistake, though you had no doubts that they already knew. Raising your head, you felt your body jolt as you felt the eyes of the man in front of you. He sat on top a raised platform on one of the fluffiest looking mats you had ever seen. Beside him, on the wall, proudly stood what you could now confirm was the family crest, which was what appeared to be a flower. While his eyes were stern with authority in the way they gazed at you, unlike the man earlier, there was no mercy or complaint hidden within them, only careful observation. Standing, he made his way over to where you stood in the center of the room with no difficulty, in his strong strides despite his apparent age. Walking in a small circle around your frozen figure, he gave only a few sounds of what he was inspecting you more closely, hands gliding over your shoulders slightly before moving down to grip over your upper arm and giving a little squeeze. He then moved onto your face, grabbing your chin and turning it every which way as he inspected your face before doing the same thing to the rest of your body. When his eyes glared down to your foot, an eyebrow shot up at the cuts from the floorboards and how you rested your weight on the opposite foot. Content with his observation, he returned to his spot on the head of at the head of the room, demons and monsters of all kind flanking him and lining the walls of the room. No one spoke as he continued to stare, and you could feel your nerves growing more and more tense with every passing second of the silence. Finally, he spoke. I have decided. You're going to work here. Immediately, the room erupted into chaos as voices lapped over one another in a frenzy. There's never been a human before. What if they're actually a spy? They won't last a week. Might as well eat them and get it over with. Even the golden-eyed man from earlier, Kai, who was sitting on the right of the old man, showed some form of surprise, with his eyes widening a fraction of an inch and glaring over at the man next to him. He continued on for a couple minutes, letting everyone get their opinions out in the air, before raising his hand and immediately silencing the room. This is the first human we've had that survived the trip here in a long time, and in one piece. Wait, one piece? And getting rid of them would be such a waste. They're hard workers once you get down to it, even if they don't last very long. Besides, after the last one died, I've missed having one around. They bring so much life with them. You didn't know whether you feel concerned or comforted by his words, feeling like you were being compared to sort of a pet. But as long as it meant they weren't going to kill you, you were all for this guy. It was at this moment Kai chose to speak up. Sir, I am more than so anyone else respect your views and decisions, but I can't but help feel as if this will bring more trouble than it's worth this thing. His face was filled with distaste as he gestured to where you stood, obviously not caring that you knew of his displeasure towards you. Has already caused the shrine to fall into unforce once, and I have no doubt they'll do it again. But then the man just chuckled, placing a hand on his shoulder. Like I said before, they're interesting creatures, and quite entertaining if you let them be. My mind is already made up. He turned, addressing the room as a whole once again. They'll live here from now on, and if I find out they've been killed somehow, and the offendant will be dealt with. A murmur of yes, sir, and yes, my lord, were all of the response he got before he waved his hand once again, dismissing them. Only Kai stayed by his side, shooting daggers into his eyes that made you flinch. Geez, you haven't even done anything to this guy, and he already hated you. What's your name, young one? He asked once the room was empty. For a moment, you didn't think you would be able to answer, throat tight with fear and as dry as a desert. After doing your best to give yourself somewhat a chance, you managed to mumble out a yen. Humming in acknowledgement, he snapped his fingers. Out of the darkness, a girl with short black hair dressed into traditional Japanese emerged. Japanese kimono emerged. And if it weren't the extra set of eyes on her face, you would have thought she was like any normal girl your age. Yona, here will teach you all you need to know and show you what's to be expected on a daily basis. He looked over to Yona, who dipped into a deep bow. Make sure she gets settled and have the cut on her foot looked at. It would do me no use to have a lame servant. Yona simply nodded her head before scurrying over to you, taking your hand and roughly pulling you behind her in her direction of the door. Oh, and FN? He looked back over to your shoulder as he called to you, pausing in the doorway. I would advise you not to try running away. Not all of those here are as kind as me, and I have no control over what would happen if you would step outside this building. With a chilling message, you were tugged through the doorway, Yona not slowing her pace whatsoever as you tried to keep up with her. You walked in silence, going down one hallway after another until you reached your destination, the servants' quarters. Upon entry, you were given 2 sets of clothes, one being your night clothes and the other be your everyday working outfit, which would be switched out once a week to be washed. You also revealed an assigned sleeping spot, one right next to Yona and the closest to the door. Only a few short minutes after you had gotten there, that you assumed was the doctor arrived, a creature with red skin and many arms, which he used to inspect and clean your foot. After wiping it, he instructed Yona, who had stood off to the side, watching with crossed arms and a sour expression. There it was, nothing more than a simple sprain, and that a day's rest would be fine. After he left, Yona was quick to follow. I have some things to do. Don't die before I get back. With that, you were left alone, saving the occasional person that would come in and get something to take or take a short nap before their next task. Each time they entered, you could feel their eyes staring, but not once did any of them say a word. You were fine with their forced isolation, though, not even sure what you would say if they decided to talk to you. Your thoughts were instead filled with concern about what was going on back home. Surely there were people growing worried about you. Your mom had been expecting you home that night. So what had she thought when you never returned? Even if she called the police, there was a slim chance of them finding you. After all, you weren't even entirely sure how you had gotten here yourself, and you didn't think they would believe your friend's story about spirits and ghosts anytime soon. It had to have something to do with the Torii Gate, though. You were sure of it. You could just find where it was again, and then maybe you could figure out a way to get back home. Your thoughts of consider was broken up between periods where you fall asleep more tired than you had originally assumed. It was from one of these naps you were awoken, jumping in panic and fearing that some of the other crazy monsters you come to get you, only to find Yona kneeling with a bowl of rice and some sort of mystery meat in her hands. Eat, it will help you recover quickly. Hesitantly, you took the bowl from her, staring cautiously at contents inside. The rice was familiar enough, but covering it was a meat you couldn't quite place in thick green sauce, which smelled suspiciously medicine. Hey, Yona, what exactly is this? Yona? Receiving no answer, you turned and saw that she was already under the covers, breathing even as she supposedly slept. Clearly, you weren't going to get any answer from her, and you were half tempted to just ignore the dish. It was then that your stomach growled, reminding you that you hadn't eaten in the past 24 hours, and mystery meat or not, it was a lot better than starving. So, with a deep breath, you hesitantly lifted your spoon to have the content to your mouth. As soon as it hit your tongue, you wanted to gag, the bitter taste assaulting your taste buds full force. The meat was no better, somehow dry and chewy at the same time, and made an awful combined with the bland rice. Still, you forced yourself to choke down every last spoonful, determined to get your energy back so you could get looking for the gate as soon as possible. After finishing, you shoved the dish away as far as possible, laying back down, facing the door, in fear that someone could try and sneak up on you in the middle of the night. With all the sleeping throughout the day, it was surprised how tired you felt, leading to the night of tossing and turning with nightmares as shadowy claws chased you through never-ending hallways, always catching you and dragging you back no matter how many times you escaped. Relief was only brought when you were awoken by Yona, face down from where she had flipped you over, in the process of waking you. Honestly, if you don't want to survive, you mustn't be a heavy sleeper. Must one chore, or they'll have your head for sure, human or not. Now get dressed before we get behind schedule. She tossed your clothes in your face, already turning to leave. It was almost record breaking how fast you slipped from one garment to another, too scared of being left behind by the only person you were familiar with to care about the stares of the others in the room who were also getting up and ready for the day. Following her, you were surprised at how well your foot already felt, not even twinging when you put pressure on it. You'll be acting as my number two from now on. Wherever I go, you go. Whatever I do, you do. And whatever I say, she glared back. Eyes briefly flashed red. You listen. Nodding in agreement, she entered what looked like a laundry room, fabrics and clothes of all colors and sizes hanging around tubs of steamed waters, where others were already working, pulling a few choice items from a pile of folded linens. She piled them onto your arms before grabbing your own stack and leading you back out. For the next few hours, you were stuck to her side like glue, going in and out of random rooms and changing the futons and comforters in them, as well as taking the considerable load of clothing back to the washroom. You also had to clean these rooms, everything from scrubbing the floors to dusting. There was one room that Yona would not allow you to enter, making you clean the floor in the hallway outside instead. At this point in time, your hands were almost raw. Sure, you were no stranger to cleaning, often doing most of the chores around the house with your mother, but this was a whole new level of its own, and the constant dripping of your hands in scalding water and continuous scrubbing with a brush had left your skin raw and peeling. Without a doubt, you would have calluses covering every inch of your skin by the end of the month. Trying to distract yourself from the ache in your hands, you hummed a song your mother would sing whenever she was cleaning, and the many scrapes and bruises you received growing up. So lost in your own world, you almost missed when he showed up. You almost didn't see him coming, almost as if he was purposely moving as quietly as possible in order to sneak up on anyone he encountered. There was no hiding that aura, though. It followed like a cloud, warping everything around him in a sense of fear and unease, and acting almost like a warning bell for whenever he approached. You may not have been here for long, but the memory of that feeling was nothing you had come to accounted with him after just 2 meetings. Your hair is snooped to an end, and where you looked up from your spot on the floor, you were greeted with a sight you could have gone without. Kai was making his way towards you, somehow looking more annoyed than he had before in the meeting. You fell into a deep bow, Yona having driven the practice into you already this morning. May see it as a form of respect. Nothing less than 90 degrees will do so. She had explained after having shoved your head down for the second time when a pair of kitsune had walked by, noses stuck in the air with their tails swaying behind them. If you don't show them respect, they might decide that they need to beat it into you. And though you disliked him, it was clear that he was not one to be messed with. So, swallowing your pride and restraining the urge to glare, you bowed low, forehead almost scraping the floor. As he grew closer, you could feel your body become more and more tense, expecting him to pass by and ignore you like the pest he obviously found you to be. Yet he didn't. When he came upon you were knelt, he stopped, feet pausing in the pursue rhythm. Neither of you said anything, and it crossed your mind that he might be trying to decide if he wanted to kill you or not. If he did, he was sure taking his sweet time with it, leaving you to panic a mess. As you resisted the urge to look up, finally he let out a short hum before turning and opening the door to the room Yona was in. Shizaki-sama! You heard her gasp, following by sounds of brooms falling and the swaying of fabrics. I was just finishing up. If I had known you were returned so soon, I would have done this earlier. Please forgive me. Taking a risk, you glared up, just in time to see Yona rushing from the room, arms full of cleaning supplies and dirty laundry. As soon as she was over the threesome, the door slammed shut behind her, pushing her forward and throwing the contents of her arms everywhere. Ah, that was a close one, she groaned, rubbing her head. I thought I was a goner for sure. Her words surprised you. Sure, you could tell he was a grumpy person, and yes, he was a demon, but who would get so angry over someone's cleaning? She noticed your glare. Yona jumped to her feet, dragging you alongside by the collar as she gathered everything once again. What are you doing sitting around? We'll miss lunch if you don't get things done soon. Her words filled you with a new energy as you hadn't eaten anything since last night, and the progress of food had you drooling. What you could do for some good vegetable tempuru, light, crispy, bitter, ready to be soaked in soy sauce and mayo. Everyone here was clearly wealthy, so the food had to be great, much better than the medical stuff you received last night. Now that you hadn't recovered, oh, you weren't recovering, they would give you something that was actually good, right? Or so you thought. Yona? You turned some towards your guide, who was sitting next to you on the walkway with her legs swinging under the railing. The view was beautiful, giving a view of surrounding forest and hot springs that ran alongside the compounds. That amazed look, the same thing you had last night, but this time instead of green, it was purple. Can't you see I'm trying to enjoy my food in silence? She glared your way, making you shake further to yourself. I was just wondering, well, the food? You hesitantly, not wanting to offend the only person who was somewhat a friend here by insulting the food of where she was from. It seemed you didn't have to say anything, because after a pause, she began laughing, not in a happy, funny way, but more of a cynical, oh, how stupid you are. If you don't like the food, you better get used to it quickly. There's 2 meals a day, and we get the same thing for lunch and dinner. If you don't want it, I'll take it off your hands. I've got no qualm about you starving. Already reaching for the bowl, you quickly yanked it back and set it on the other side, sighing as you looked back over the landscape. I just thought that since everything here was so nice that we might get something a little better. You know. Yona shook her head. I hated to break it to you, sweetheart, but yokai are greedy creatures. Just because Master has a lot of money doesn't mean he's going to spend it on us. Making sure his servants have great food, he has better things to do with it. And as long as we're still living here, he doesn't care how we feel about the taste of our rice. We're greedy creatures, and we'll do whatever we can to get what we want. You should have known that was the case, but the way he had been so nice to you before, instilling the false sense of hope in you, despite it was better to move on to something else that was less depressing, you brought up what had been bothering you since the interaction with Kai earlier. Say, Yona, why were you so panicked earlier when Kai showed up? No sooner were the words out of your mouth than you were tackled to the ground, Yona above you, stalling her hips with a hand over your mouth. Do you have a death wish or something? Never say that name again. Nodding your head in agreement, the delicate girl let you up, removing your hand from your mouth and taking her spot back at the railing. Caution from her earlier attack, you spoke once again. So what's to do with him? He always seems to be in a bad mood. I don't think I've ever seen him without a scowl on his face. He's the young master, next in line to take the spot as head of the Shizaki clan from Master. He's a clean freak with a real short temper, so it's best to stay out of his way. Thinking back, you remembered how panicked she had been when he had walked into her finishing up cleaning, and here you thought your mom was strict about chores. Is that why you were so panicked earlier? Was that his room or something? Yes, and I'm one of the only ones who can do it anywhere near his standards. And sometimes even then I get in trouble for missing a tiny spot in the corner. There have been many to feel his wrath much worse, so I suppose I'm lucky in a sense that I'm still alive. A chill down your spine as you were reminded you were around literal demons. He hasn't killed that many people, right? You almost scared to ask, but the curiosity won out over common sense. Yona laughed in a joyless way once again, sending a sly look your way. You know why we call him the Crow Demon? It's because whenever he goes, there's bound to be bodies. Now you are burning with questions, almost all of them about Shizaki. But it was at last the bell ring, signing the end of lunch. The second part of your day as the same as the first, following Yona around, cleaning vigorous rooms and halls, looking out for approaching nobles, and staying out of the way. Just like Yona had said, that night's dinner was the same green mystery as the night before. All the mineral labor had left you starving, and you drowned the bitter concoction without complaint. The taste was still lingered in your mouth by the time you went back to bed last night, bone tired and barely enough energy to change into sleeping clothes as you collapsed on top of your blankets and fell into a dreamless sleep. By the way, this chapter was a total of 8,000, well, not total, but 8,000 plus words. And part 2 is 5,000 plus. And I think part 3 is 11,000 plus. So that will be fun to read. But that's why I'm posting them every Monday. And by the way, guys, I think I took a total of 2 hours trying to record this. 1 hour kind of recording this, and then another hour taking a break. So no worries, I'm not stressing myself. I didn't stress myself, I don't think. Maybe when I saw the 11,000 words for part 3, but chapter 3 will be in 2 parts technically, because I'm not reading 11,000 words because that would be a 2-hour video, and I'm not doing a 2-hour video. I'm sorry, I cannot. But anyways, I hope you guys enjoy. Bye, my lovelies. I love you all so much.